Good morning. It is 7:58 a.m. on Thursday, April 28th, 2022. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I've been up for a little bit, it's fine. So last night I I watched the first 2 episodes of the newest and final season of Better Call Saul. And what a great show that show continues to be. It's just like there's a degree to which you have to just completely decide to get over the idea that obviously this is a prequel series being made years after the original, but so Bob Odenkirk, supposed to be younger, certainly looks older because, of course, time actually moves in one direction. So you notice that, but you have to just decide that that's okay because otherwise you would miss out on an incredible show where you just are seeing. It's in some respects, although I did like Breaking Bad, it's interesting to watch this show because I think in some respects it's a much more human show than Breaking Bad was. Because Breaking Bad, about Walter White, is kind of like, as a protagonist, he starts with some more or less sympathetic goals, but also has some substantial personality flaws that end up getting just further and further exacerbated, and he just gets worse and worse until the end. I mean, he's basically, although narratively he's still the protagonist, he's basically a villain. And I understand just from that perspective how some people can still find themselves rooting for him just by virtue of how I think it's a little bit like the classic saying about how it's impossible to make an anti-war film because just the process of depicting it on screen inherently kind of glamorizes war to some extent. And I think in some respects that's what we're talking about with why some people continue to root for Walt White as Breaking Bad develops. But nonetheless, it's about a guy who turns out he was never as good as it seemed like he was, and he just gets worse. Whereas it's a more nuanced transition for Jimmy McGill, aka Saul Goodman, where he starts as someone who has always felt like he needs to play fast and loose with the rules in order to get through, but ultimately was still kind of an optimistic, cheery guy with hope and belief in people and in the world, and watching that change happen. And in particular, we've got some great secondary characters there, and Kim Wexler especially. Oh, she's so good. And especially watching her, like, there's this process where in a lot of respects, she's ultimately kind of seduced into this idea of how you can be more successful if you know how to break the rules the right way. And in many respects, although we find that we're surprised to some extent to see how much of what we came to know as Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad turns out to be her influence, even though, earlier in the show, she seemed like she was always the straight and narrow one. But at the same time, oh, it's very complicated and nuanced. It's a great show. I'm glad that it's back. I decided to sign up for the AMC Plus streaming service in order to watch it. And I'm not convinced that I will keep it otherwise. For one, it's yet another one of these streaming services that doesn't have an app for the PlayStation, which is irritating just because that is kind of my primary streaming box these days. And so being unable to watch it there is annoying. Although it's possible, I suppose, that there's other options, I guess. But nonetheless, in any case, I'm glad Better Call Saul is back. So I'm going to leave it there, and I will talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.